This week we take a closer look at a couple of next-gen games with a decidedly last-gen feel. Perspective-bending puzzler Fez, out now for PlayStation 4, and Johnny Robot tackles Mercenary Kings from the creators of Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the game. We also get a little tuneful with Matt Bock, creative director at Harmonix, currently working on Disney's Fantasia, Music Evolved. This is Player Attack. Hi, I'm Jessica Citizen, and this week Christopher von Hassel is in the news as possibly the youngest hacker to breach Microsoft systems. The 5-year-old was frustrated after his dad applied parental controls to the family's Xbox One, so he decided to try and get past them. To his great delight, he managed it, simply by hitting the spacebar a number of times in the password verification screen. Christopher's dad, who works in computer security, was delighted at his son's ingenuity, but reported the vulnerability to Microsoft anyway. The issue has now been fixed. Christopher's been rewarded with some free games and a year-long subscription to Xbox Live, and his name is now included in an online list of security researchers who have contributed to Xbox success. And speaking of Microsoft, Major Nelson has confirmed that while he doesn't have a date just yet, external game storage is headed to the Xbox One. The good Major was unsure if the functionality will extend to media support, but even having an extra hard drive to store game data will be pretty great. Now onto a little bit of Dota 2. If you'd been thinking about heading to the International 2014, Valve's championships for the game, I really hope you bought your tickets. Valve put more than 10,000 tickets to Seattle's Key Arena on sale on April 4th, ranging in price from $99 for general admission up to $4.99 for VIP level, including meet and greets and an after party. It took less than 1 hour for the entire allocation to sell out. Of course, if you can't get to Washington State for the event, you can always settle in and watch at home. Valve will be streaming the entire event free of charge with commentary provided in a number of languages. And if you want to watch more about competitive Dota 2, Valve also suggests you check out the free-to-play documentary, particularly now as the studio has just released a 2GB patch for the movie. You'll now get a whole stack of extra footage, including both Dendy and Fear, from the Q&A session that took place at the film's recent premiere. It is completely free, and you can grab it now via Steam. A couple of tidbits have come in from Blizzard too. Firstly, the new World of Warcraft expansion, Warlords of Draenor, has entered alpha testing. Unlike most early tests though, Blizzard is also using this as an opportunity to try out an entirely new file format, with CASC replacing the 20-year-old MPQ. The company has pushed the aging file structure far beyond what it was ever designed to do, so the new expansion is as good a time as any to retire it. At the same time as that, Blizzard is stepping into brand new territory as Hearthstone launches for iPad. Productivity around the world has plummeted over the past week as gamers discover just how addictive the card game really can be, particularly when you're on the bus. On to other quick news, Ubisoft has revealed that there are no plans for a pre-release demo version of Watch Dogs, which is out in May. Creative director Jonathan Morin explains simply that demos take time and the developer is busily focusing on the game as a whole rather than a smaller chunk. As Kingsley mentioned last week in his Titanfall review, EA and Respawn have some work to do when it comes to the game's matchmaking system. Happily, both companies are all over it, promising the next Titanfall update will completely revamp how it all works. The studios have made the unusual decision to prioritise skill over speed, so it might take a little while longer to pick your teammates, but they will be better suited as a whole. A few weeks ago, Amy Hennig unceremoniously left Naughty Dog, where she'd been working as creative director on Uncharted 4. At the time, the move was surrounded by rumours that the veteran developer had been pushed, but regardless of what prompted the move, she has certainly landed on her feet. Hennig's new home is EA studio Visceral Games, where she's working on an unannounced Star Wars project, which just might be the same as the open-world Star Wars we've been promised from EA Canada. And it's only a short jump from Star Wars to Disney, so even though we're not sure whether any Jedis will make it into Disney Magical World, it seemed like an appropriate time to mention the latest game from the House of Mouse. Hi! Disney Magical World is kind of like Animal Crossing. You move into a town where you can create your own avatar, manage a cafe, go fishing, explore dungeons, hunt for ghosts, and generally interact with a whole assortment of Disney characters. The game launched in Japan last August and is out this week in North America for the 3DS family. At this stage, there is no release confirmed for Australia, New Zealand, or Europe, but our fingers are firmly crossed. For more information on any of these stories or to keep up to date with the latest gaming news, head to playerattack.com. But for now, stick around, got plenty more still to come. Fez is a game that will mess with your perception of perspective. The primary goal in the game revolves around collecting shards of golden cubes scattered throughout the game's relatively non-linear environments. These cubes will open doors in the game's hub area, allowing for further progression. There are also keys to find which will open doors to secret rooms and new areas for you to explore. Fez also does one thing very differently to most games. There are no enemies. There is no punishment for failure. If Gomez falls from a platform, he will quickly respawn and continue on his way. It's a streamlined little game that doesn't desperately try to do a ton of things at once. Instead, Fez focuses on making sure the core gameplay is consistently enjoyable and rewarding, particularly for fans of 8-bit games and the Nintendo Entertainment System. The world owes more than a little to classic gaming experiences like The Legend of Zelda, Super Mario Bros. And Tetris, even down to featuring a level or two set inside a Game Boy. Much like fellow indie darling Braid, there is a great sense of achievement to be found in overcoming a particularly tricky puzzle. One example, a Tetris-themed challenge which will have you tearing your hair out before bathing you in the warm, fuzzy feeling of victory upon completion. Now, of course, it is difficult to talk about Fez without mentioning its creator, outspoken indie developer Phil Fish. You might remember him as one part of Indie Game the Movie. It took Fish 5 years to develop Fez, winning a stack of awards before the game was even playable. Some people love the guy for the commitment he has to his work and the creative results that have come for his efforts. Nobody can deny his talent as a game designer, considering every element of Fez oozes professionalism. The audio and visuals are as sharp as George Carlin's wit, and the game design is near perfect. However, Fish hasn't gotten to this point without developing or creating a few enemies. Opinionated critics delight in sparking prolonged arguments with him online, particularly via Twitter. One of these arguments between Fish and a journalist contributed to the cancellation of Fez 2, which had been announced back in June 2013. As well as axing the game, Fish announced that he was leaving the industry completely, explaining that the decision isn't the result of any one thing, but the end of a long, bloody campaign. Fez is an indie darling for a reason. It is a testament to the talent of passionate developers and confirms that not all games need enemies, bosses, and long exposition-fueled narratives. Not every game needs explosive barrels. It's a simple game that wears its heart on its sleeve and flaunts more charm than an Irishman at the New York Paddy's Day Parade. If you missed out on this indie gem in its previous releases, picking it up for PS3, PS4 and Vita through cross-buy is a no-brainer. Hopefully, Phil will calm down in the coming months and change his mind about that cancelled sequel. If he doesn't, I'll eat my felt hat. Captain America: The Winter Soldier is in cinemas April 3, and thanks to our friends at Marvel, we have a very special prize pack to share with you. It's packed with all sorts of goodies, including a t-shirt, a cap, headphones, and even a coaster set and ice cube tray, and it could all be yours, just for watching Player Attack and answering one simple question. Head to playerattack.com, follow the links to the Captain America competition, fill out your name and contact details, and answer the question. You're in the running for this amazing prize pack. The competition is open to anyone in Australia and New Zealand and runs until April 18, with the winner announced on Player Attack shortly after. For the full terms and conditions, see our website.
Sometimes, rarer than it should be in this industry, good things just happen, and success stories emerge. Mercenary Kings from the aptly named developer Tribute Games is a prime example of this. Crowdsourced by Kickstarter a couple of years back, this 2D old-school shooter is finally ready for us to have our grubby mitts all over it. Question is, does it fire Full Metal Slugs? Or, 2D shooter analogy for sucks. As soon as you boot up this retro-inspired bullet fest, your eyes are going to get diabetes because everything looks so freaking sweet. This isn't Tribute Games' first rodeo when it comes to pixel art though, having worked on the awesome Scott Pilgrim beat-em-up a couple of years back. The colors are gorgeous, the sprites highly detailed, and the animation is top-notch. I probably had more fun than I should have just wandering around encountering weirder and weirder enemies, and marveling at their animations. Well, specifically the ones as my cap bullets, that's right, you heard me correctly, cap bullets, exploded their heads like water balloons. But let me back up. Why am I shooting dudes, / robots, / odd eggplant gremlins in the first place? You play as either King, or in my game, Martin Riggs, because he's a loose cannon, or Empress, who are skilled mercenaries tasked with taking down the evil and mysterious group Claw. If you think it sounds kind of weak or like an 80s kids cartoon premise, you'd be on the right track, but I'll remind you, Catgun. The gameplay is what you'd expect from a 2D retro-inspired shooter. Basically, blast everything you see until you reach the end of the level. Except this time, there's a twist. There's rampant exploration, an upgradable home base offering different missions, and what I can only liken to Monster Hunter-esque loot dropping system and crafting system. Another addition to this gameplay is the inclusion of an ammo clip and a Gears of War style active reload system, which means you can't rely on the ABS style of play, which for all of you who didn't waste hours in the arcades as a kid making up stupid anagrams means always be shooting. Everything you'd expect from this formula works well here. Bullets fire and enemies die. However, one thing that bugged me, as found in quite a few retro remakes, is the controls just didn't seem as responsive as they should be. Especially in a game where making jumps over punchy pits is kinda important. But let's get to Mercenary King's biggest draw, the crafting system. This is the sticky element of the game, and it works about as great as bubblegum in the hair. Killing enemies might have them dropping crafting items like leather or uranium, which I think is an OH&S issue, which you can then use to build more insane guns and melee items. This customization is surprisingly deep, allowing you to have a core weapon, like a boomstick called the Blackthorn, mad props for 2 pop culture references in one, and then equipping varying scopes, stocks, even magazines and different bullet types. Not only is this ridiculously addictive, but it also brings the funny with clever pop culture references or just straight up things like the barrel being a cat that mews every time you fire it. For all the great points, Mercenary Kings does stumble in some areas, mainly that of any game with a loot system, repetition. With only a handful of levels, you'll find yourself backtracking over your bloody footprints and empty shells far too regularly, and the mission objectives get pretty samey once you hit the halfway mark. Mercenary Kings also falls into a retro trope no man should fall into. Main character guy is a muscle-bound badass with a bandana, but main character girl is hot pants wearing, tank top sporting, gratuitous jiggle animation on legs. She even starts with a kick-ass bomber jacket on at the beginning of every level. Bomber jackets scream, "I'm here to take down your island of terrorism and be practical while doing it." I'm talking about practicality in a video game. Moving on. All in all, Mercenary Kings is a rad game. It's fun, it's frantic, and it's just plain jammed with love for a pixel era gone by. There's plenty to do and make you keep coming back, and if you can adjust to the less than responsive controls, it's easily one of the best pallbearers for a genre long thought dead. RIP Metal Slug, you still had so many bullets left to shoot.
Swimming in your world, something spiritual. I'm gonna get every time you spend the night.
So Disney booked us for a meeting. They were like, "Hey, we want to talk about a game." We were like, "Is this going to be like a Hannah Montana rock band game or like Cars the musical?" And it turned out it was a Fantasia game. Everyone was so psyched when we announced it at the company. Everyone stood up and did a standing ovation. the team has been so psyched to work on this thing, and they put their heart and soul in it. We see this as the future of music games. Even before we actually got the Fantasia deal happening, we were already working on ways that people could use motion to impact music. And so when they came to us and said, hey, let's make a Fantasia game, it's an absolute perfect fit. We've been psyched.
What's it like working with a brand as well known and as well loved as Disney and Fantasia and all of that? What's that been like?
For me, it's a dream come true. I mean, I've loved Disney my entire life, and to be able to work on a Disney property is just unbelievable to me. When we got the deal happening, Disney said to us, hey, we don't want Fantasia the movie, the game. We want you to make something that's in the spirit of Fantasia, something that Walt would have made if Walt was making a game 70 years after this film. So that's sort of been our prompt, and so we were trying to really push the boundaries and make something that's as ambitious and unique as the original film.
Because the original film was pretty crazy. I hear that Walt himself had some pretty bizarre ideas on how it was meant to be shown in cinemas.
Oh yeah, I mean, he was experimenting with like smell-o-vision and 3D, and they actually built this thing called Fantasound. It was installed in the only 12 theaters that ever played the film, and it was a surround sound system that cost $30,000 to install in 1940. It's crazy. I mean, when you read all the notes from the meetings that were happening around Fantasia, you just can see how imaginative and how on point Walt is at that point in time. It's just, he was elevating animation through the use of classical music, and I think we have an opportunity to, elevate people's connection to their music through interactivity.
So were you given access to all of those old documents that came around the movie?
Yeah, so we had pretty much unparalleled access to all of the original stenographer writings that were essentially transcripts of all the meetings that were happening.
That must have been incredible.
It's an amazing thing. I mean, it's such a rich history, and to be able to bring classical music, to have Night on Bald Mountain in the game, let people bring that into a contemporary context, change it and make it theirs, is an unbelievable thing to be able to do. And part of me wishes that we had had stenographers writing down all the things that we were talking about, because it's been a long journey getting here. We've tried a lot of different things, but I think we've arrived at something that we can all really love and we're all really proud of.
So for people who haven't seen the game or haven't quite grasped how it all works, because it is a little bit confusing from outside, can you tell us a little bit about the game itself, please?
Yeah, so you're cast as a sorcerer's apprentice. Yen Sid, the wizard from the Sorcerer's Apprentice short, is training you to be a master musical sorcerer. You're in a world where magic is music and everything's made of music. And you do, sort of conductor-like remixing of contemporary songs, classical songs, huge range of content. And as you're playing those songs, you change them. You make new parts for them and you blend them in ways that change the gameplay and change the sound. At the same time, you're also transforming each one of the different worlds within Fantasia. We're showing off two worlds here at the show. One is the shoal, the other is the press. It's like an underwater level and a classic newspaper factory. And so as you're playing songs, you're bringing the sounds of Queen into those worlds, bringing the sounds of Fun, Some Nights into those worlds. We have things like fish that are singing samples from Fun. We have clams that you're playing a jazz solo over while you're listening to a jazz mix of Bohemian Rhapsody. It's out there, but it's something that lets everyone be creative with music. And I think that's something that everyone's always wanted to do, and we're giving them the opportunity to do that.
Even if you have absolutely no musical skill and only the barest grasp of how to move in a semi-rhythmical fashion.
Yeah, it's not a dance game. It's not Dance Central. It's not as complex from a motion standpoint. You aren't shaking your hips. You can do it all pretty much just with your arm movements. And we're doing tons and tons of magic behind the scenes to make sure that every note sounds great, and that while you can create a broad range of different outcomes from songs, there's never a flub note. There's never an out-of-tune thing.
I know there is an element of scoring in the game, so it's not just about discovering, although that's obviously a major point. Have you been watching people playing the game? Have they been going for the high score, or have they just been going for what sounds good or what sounds really crazy?
I think mostly right now they're trying to explore the bounds of what they can make and see how crazy it can get. But, in the game, we do have a rigorous scoring system, strong detection. The game's not easy all the time, and it gets pretty challenging when we start throwing up a bunch of different movements at the same time. We're also trying to create a tie between your performance and your creative potential. So when you unlock a manipulator, something that lets you make a new little part for the song that's going to loop, you have to unlock that first by getting a bunch of gestures in a row. So it's still a scoring game. There's still ways to find optimal paths through. You can do it from that perspective, or you can try and be creative. I think Right now, everyone's just psyched about the creative potential of the game.
And that's about it for this edition of Player Attack. Thanks for watching. Next week, Johnny explores Batman Arkham Origins Blackgate, which hit mobile devices last year and has now been brought to console. We chat to Sean Schemmel, the voice of Goku from the Dragon Ball series, and Jimmy the Geek gets into the seasonal spirit with a look at his top 5 favourite video game Easter eggs. In the meantime, you can catch us on playerattack.com. We're on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter, and if you've got something you want to say, send us an email, mailbox@playerattack.com, or just hop on our forums. Till next week, I'm Jessica Citizen, and this is Player Attack.